Okay, so we also have a farmer, one of you cooperators, close out the meeting with some final remarks, some final thoughts on the meeting or final thoughts on the program. And this year we asked Arlyn Kauffman, who farms with his Uncle Morris and his wife Sue down in south central Iowa, almost Missouri, but we'll still count him as Iowa. So Arlyn, take us away.
Thank you, Stephen. It's an honor to make a few comments here. Stephen wondered if I would make a few comments about what I value about PFI and the Cooperators program, and he probably didn't think about it, but it was probably in his mind, you know, what would a car-driving Amishman like? Why is he in PFI anyway? So I'll close with a few remarks, maybe in that regard. I'm going to start with a short story, then I have some words from Jesus, and then I'm going to end with an African proverb. So yesterday's conversation in field crops started to go very badly towards the end. So badly, in fact, that Vic had to rescue us from destruction. But anyway, that conversation reminded me of about a month ago. I was on the truck going up to Riceville to get non-GMO meal to bring back to our farm, which we use for the laying hens. And the children usually like to ride along. And Asher was with me. He's 4 years old. So on that day, the farmers along the way, especially north of Highway 20 and up along the flats there on State Road 9 through Osage and east of there, they were out in the field with these big tractors pulling these heavy pieces of tillage with these long arms that go down. And they were doing this, believe it or not just on corn stalks, but on soybean stubble. And it had just rained, and there was lots of mud on their tires. And their tractors were huge. Their tillage pieces were huge. Anyway, I thought it was kind of sad, but as we go along and we pick up our meal and come back and Asher's looking around, they always have this contest about who can spot and identify the farm equipment pieces first. But Asher finally said, "Dad, what are those things? What are they doing?" So he knows what a combine does and what a sprayer does and a planter, but he doesn't really know what a tillage does very, very much, especially not the ones behind those big machines with those long arms that reach way down into the ground. I said, well, they're doing deep fall tillage. And after a while I said, Dad, when can we do that? I said, we can't do that. Can we do that sometime? I said, no, we're never going to do that. Why, Dad? Well, I said, I think it's probably not very good for the soil. That's why. Pause. What comes next? Why are they doing that? Why are they doing that, right? So what would you have said? So maybe they have venture capital in biodiesel. Maybe their nephew runs the factory that makes the tillage or the big machines.
Recreational tillage.
Recreational, maybe, yeah. They couldn't find a way they couldn't find anything less damaging for their teenagers to do. I really struggled to come up with a good answer that was, you know, don't want to be disrespectful. And they probably, you know, they probably do it because their daddy did and their neighbors do it. I don't know. But I finally, there was really only one answer that I could come up with, and that is, they must not be practical farmers. And so we think about how they might become practical farmers, or how they might think about changing their practices, and how we might get them to want to change their practices, etc. And that was where our conversation was in our meeting yesterday afternoon. And I was getting a little concerned. I thought we might end up having a church split in which part of the group has to become they would get a new name called the Elite Farmers of Iowa. But I knew I couldn't join them. I was still going to be a practical farmer of Iowa because I'm still fairly hesitant to market what I'm doing with a great deal of certainty, because I know there's so many things that I don't understand. And so I think that we should be careful how quick, to use Vic's words, we try to evangelize, or in what spirit we do that. So I thought of a couple words from Jesus. In Matthew 7, he said, "Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many there are who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate, and difficult is the way which leads to life, and few there are who find it." So in a little different context, and speaking about eternal life, we might remember that the right thing will often not be done by the majority. And so we shouldn't immediately become disconcerted or despondent if the majority is not doing the right thing. You will rarely find the majority doing the right thing. The majority will do what seems natural, that is, what gratifies most or causes the least pain, and seems to make sense to them and their social milieu, and we're not excluded from that. So, the warning there is about being in the majority, but also about thinking that we could compel the majority to do the right thing. So, let's be careful about trying to compel them. Jesus also said in Matthew 23:15, again in a little different context, he's speaking to religious leaders. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites." Now he's talking to a group of people that consider themselves elite. So let's be careful here. "For you travel land and sea to win one proselyte, and when he is won, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves." So let's consider how we can live and we can farm, and let's bring others along, but not maybe in a way that would, well, I'm not sure how to summarize that, but we need to be cautious. I think that I was thinking about those farmers up along Highway 9. What would it take for them to change? Do they need money? Do they need policy, rules? But if they wanted to, how would they do it? What kind of environment would it take for them to change? And I think that more than money and more than policy, they need interactions with humans that can help them in the same way that I have benefited from being a member of Practical Farmers and have gotten help to make changes. If we're surrounded by people who encourage us, we're much more likely to succeed in making changes, especially if they're changes that are different from the majority. So when we finally get that moment, when our neighbor asks us, well, about that cover crop, because he's seen it being done now for a couple years, we finally get our chance because he's asked us now. So we're going to go ahead and give him the whole spiel, soil health, grazing, possibilities, and all that. But I don't think Jesus would do that either. Most of the time, when someone asks him a question, what did he do? He responded with another question. So I think, rather than first giving them the full load, we should ask them, as we should ourselves. Why? Why are you curious about that? Why would you want to do that on your farm? Why do you want to increase your revenue? Questions that generate more thought. Remember, the real contribution of education is to replace cocksure ignorance with thoughtful uncertainty. And we can do that if we are willing to ask questions rather than at any prime opportunity. Finally, we get to give the whole cover crop gospel to somebody in 15 minutes. So then, why is a car driving Amishman, why is he attracted to PFI? So the Amish Mennonites are part of a group that's about 500 years old, but really one of the few surviving groups that believes that the smallest unit of sustainable spiritual life is not the individual, but rather the group. And so that's in my psyche. I can't not think like that, really. And so as I look at PFI, I see that the possibility for going farther with people than what I could alone. And like the African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So that's why I'm in PFI. I think we can go farther if we go together. And what does farther mean? It doesn't mean bigger farms necessarily, bigger machinery, or more celebrity status. Farther means bringing our families along. It means taking care of the soil. It means building up communities. That's farther. And if we go together,